Hey, I'm Matt Blankenship, North Point Mortgage, one of your lender partners. Today I'm just going to talk a little bit about FICO score. You guys probably have folks that you deal with, and what we hear a lot, or at least when we talk to people, is they'll say, well, because we always ask them, how are your scores? If we're talking to them for the first time, if they haven't done an application yet, just kind of making small talk, which I encourage you guys to do when you're talking to somebody, especially on the boomtown stuff, if you participate in that. I don't think it's a bad thing for you to say, well, a lot of realtors don't want to get involved in the lending side of the credit, but on the boomtown stuff, you kind of want to know you're not wasting your time. And I don't think it's bad to ask them, like, so do you, have any idea what your credit is? You get free scores from FICO, or the other one they always reference is Credit Karma. And most people I find these days are somehow, some way, they have gone on Credit Karma and they've kind of got an idea what their scores are. And that's a nice indicator, because if they tell you their scores in the 450s, I mean, there's not a whole lot we're going to be able to do most likely anytime soon. So I would say don't spend a lot of time on that particular call. But that being said, I mean, if they, they say, yeah, I mean, my score should be, 800. Today's explanation is really to tell you what the differences are, because there are different scoring models, different versions. Think about them like different versions of a software. And each industry, like automotive, credit card, getting credit cards, they use different versions of the software. So FICO score is what it's called, but each industry uses their own version of what they consider the model of a version of the FICO score. So for example, this first page here kind of breaks down for you, what's used most widely, which is the FICO score model 8. But then it tells you, like in auto lending, that what they use them all. In credit card, they do use them all. But then in the mortgage business, they use, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion very specifically use these versions right now. And so that's why we'll always get, someone will say, well, I got an 800 credit score. And I'm like, well, you probably do. If you get a free copy of your score, you go to, Credit Karma or FICO. But our models are going to be a little bit different, but it should be a good indicator that your scores are really good. And sometimes ours are better. Sometimes ours are a couple points less. So that's kind of just explaining the difference there on why those scores can be different. It's Fair Isaac. I'll be honest with you, I can't remember what the acronym is. Fair Isaac, and I can't remember what the C and the O is, but it's adopted by all three bureaus, Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian, though. And I can get back to you and tell you what that official acronym is. But anyway, so that's kind of explaining why they could be potentially different. And then the other thing that people worry about, and especially is true for what we're doing and how we're trying to support you guys, is they all are worried about, having their credit pulled. And if someone has really great credit, having their credit pulled for a mortgage is nothing. It's like a bucket of water, and it's like a drop. Okay, it's like not going to affect their scores enough to even be concerned about. But everybody there's this mentality that I don't want to have my credit pulled because it's going to hurt my scores. Well, this kind of explains a little bit further that they don't really look at inquiries that have happened within the last 30 days, like right before you're getting a mortgage. So there's already that window. Like if you just happen to have talked to American Express about a new card, or you just bought a car or something like that, that's not really impacting your scores. So when we pull credit, those most recent 30 days worth of inquiries on their credit aren't really impacting us. And then once we do pull your credit, there's the two models. There's an older model, and that looks at the last 15 days. So that's like kind of they look at that like the opportunity for you to shop for a mortgage. And then there's a newer model that actually goes to 45 days. So in that 45-day window, so what we talk to people a lot about is, first of all, we want to be the first ones to pull their credit profile. If they want to shop around, that's fine. But let us be the first, because chances are we're going to get the best version of the score. And then we've got so many products that most likely we're going to be able to do something for them. Whereas if they've talked to 10 people over the last 90 days and then they come to us, we might not get as good a score when we go to pull it. And there's really, not a whole lot we can do about that, unless maybe it's close and we can, go back to what we talked about last time I did the credit thing, about the what if simulator, and being able to see what can we do to get their scores up. Someone that's got a high 500 score, that's a candidate really for the what if simulator. For you guys, I'll work on the what if simulator if they're lower than that, but I also ask a lot of other questions, because if they don't have any money and they've also got 475 scores, I mean, we're really just kind of beating our head against the wall because there's probably not a whole lot we're going to be able to do for them. Even if we get the scores up, they're going to still be low, and you're going to need reserves because getting someone with low credit scores approved is harder unless they've got some money. So if they don't have their own money for the down payment, that can be difficult. But that's kind of it in a nutshell. I mean, there's some statistical information in here as to why they think people that have a lot of inquiries, you think about it like when they look at overall risk in our industry, what they found with the risk is that the majority of people who have their credit pulled multiple times, they're 8 times more likely to file bankruptcy at some point in their future, and that's just based on stats, So, when people say, I don't want to have my credit pulled, I usually ask the question, well, have you had it pulled? And if you haven't, well, really we need to pull it to see what we can do, run it through the system, run it electronically, see if we can get an approval, and score it, try to get credits, try to get rates for them depending on what their scores are. But if they've had it pulled recently by one other person and then you get a hold of them or you're like, well, hey, that's great, you've got somebody, and I appreciate that, but these folks are in-house, they pre-underwrite the file. We could potentially make an offer for you guys with no finance contingency, which is huge. So let them pre-underwrite your file. You don't have to use them. I know you said you got somebody else that also looked at your scores, but let them give it a try and run it through electronically so we have that as a plan B in case, and usually what we find is that our rates aren't going to be, we're going to be very competitive anyway. So, usually if they come with us and we get them pre-underwritten and approved, they usually stay with us, So, but that's kind of it in a nutshell on the scoring and why the model are a little bit different and what that means when someone says, I've got this score, but why is it different? And this is kind of me trying to explain for you that whenever people tell you their scores are good, it's probably going to be pretty close to what they think it is, but it won't be the exact same, and this is why. So, do y'all have any questions about credit scoring?
Does the annual creditreport.com, is that something that they can pull?
So my understanding is, and my experience personally has been, the annualcreditreport.com, you can get, I believe it's up to two copies of your credit free per year, but that's a very detailed report that you go online, you request it, and they send you the report just so you can see what's on your credit. I don't think the annual credit report gives you the scores. That was my experience when I did it personally years ago, is that I got this really long, lengthy, credit report that had every little detail, and that was for each bureau. So you do get those every year for free. And if someone is kind of in a tough spot and they're trying to figure out what's going on, it's faster for them to just come to us and let us take a look at it. We're going to pull it, even if it's bad news. And that will probably tell them most of what they need to do. They probably don't need to do the annual, because that's kind of old school.
My niche usually
Yeah.
says they believe that running the credit is the devil.
Mm-hmm. So. And that's why I'm having this conversation because, it's like you kind of putting the cart before the horse. You're going out and you're looking at houses, but you don't even know if you can get a loan. And I know for you guys, we're trying to help you not waste your time. And so, because for y'all wasting time could be, and I don't know if anybody still does this, but driving around and showing houses before they can get a loan. I don't know if there's any realtors that do that anymore, but sometimes a newer agent might be willing to do that because they're just trying to get going and they have a lot of faith in people up front until they've been burned a few times and realize, oh, this person can't even get a loan and I've wasted some gas driving around. I don't know a lot of realtors that do that anymore. But that being said, this is it's, in my opinion, you kind of have to make it's part of the commitment of, are they serious about buying? If they're going to buy, then they shouldn't have a problem with you getting the credit profile or letting us take a look at it. And if they do and they hem and haw about it, then, I'm not saying to be suspicious, but I'm saying that kind of gives you a little bit of an indication. Yeah, they're not really serious, But I encourage you to ask the questions up front about the scores, if you can, just to kind of get a general idea. Like, you're not trying to get in their business, but you're just trying to understand, because what will happen is a lot of people will say, well, my scores are this, and then they go, but I do have this repos, and they'll start talking about their credit. And then when they start talking about, I had a bankruptcy or I had a repossession, again, these are like red flags, like, okay, this Boomtown lead might not be such a hot lead, you know. And I'm using Boomtown as an example, but that could be for anything, any referral you get, whatever, you know. So, but we're happy to, you know, get them in and take a quick look at them. And, you know, a lot of them I've been getting, we're getting them prepped for a purchase in the future. They're not all ready. A lot of them are, but some of them aren't. But they're close enough that we can get them. If they'll follow the blueprint that we give them, then they'll be ready for you. And who doesn't want to get a purchase, you know, 5 months from now that you didn't know you had, you know? So, anyway.
Do you have someone that's, like I have a friend who wants to get into a home. He did have a bankruptcy in the past.
Right.
He's trying to rebuild his credit.
Right.
And he's getting up to like the over 6.
That's good, yeah.
But in that case, like, what's the best advice for someone to establish, like keep establishing credit and
He, you know, so this is a couple other just little bullet points about credit in general. A lot of people that do really well and they make good money, they don't use credit, and they think they're better than everybody else. And I mean, this just might been my experience of doing this for a long time. And they'll think their scores are great, and sometimes they will be, but sometimes their scores aren't as good as they think they are, because the only way you're going to get a score is if your credit can be measured. And so to your point about, you know, for that guy, he wiped the slate clean when he filed the bankruptcy. So now he has no credit. So he has to go establish credit. And so the best thing he can do is to, you know, get a few new cards, try to get them all at the same time if he can, and then like buy his gas on one, buy his groceries on one, pay them off. Exactly. See, she knows the drill. Yeah, so you pay them down, or if you're going to carry a balance, make sure it's like, just for easy numbers, if your credit limit is $1,000, then keep your balance under 200, under 20% is kind of a safe range. That if you're going to carry a balance, that won't hurt you as much as if you're at like maxed out. We see a lot of people right now that are maxed out on their credit, or they're closer to their limits, and that can hurt your scores. But yeah, she's right. I mean, and if he can just, you know, and these are, I'm sorry. Well, it is like the official is like they'll say 29, but I like to give myself a cushion. So 20 to 25 is probably better, and that's based on my experience of running the what if simulator. Yeah. So sometimes the what if simulator, I have to get them down below 20% before it'll move the needle, you know, and that probably has a lot to do with that specific borrower. But I just feel like 20% of your limit is a better benchmark. If you have to carry a balance, the better thing to do, like she said, was to pay them off every month, you know, because then it's showing. But that's being measured, so his activity that's good is being measured, and that's going to be his fastest way to build credit. Also, the first thing you get offers for when you file bankruptcy are cars. You get inundated with car offers to buy a car. And I'm not saying don't go buy a car, but you know, the car fixed rate payments, you're going to get dinged for a new credit inquiry to get the car. Then it's also a little bit of a ding on your scores for about 6 months because you have a new piece of credit that we don't know how it's going to. Automobile. Okay. Yeah. And then and then it's a fixed rate payment. So like there's, you know, when I go into the what if simulator, I'm trying to figure out what can I do to like improve their scores. There's no real paying down on a car payment to like make it a better score. It's a fixed rate payment. Same thing goes for student loans, you know, or fixed rate loans. There's really nothing you can manipulate those with. It's credit cards that you can potentially manipulate the balances and improve your scores.
Have you heard of these debit cards that get connected to your checking account?
I haven't heard of that.
They report. It's like it's one called Extra.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that, of a debit card. I mean, I know that debit cards don't typically show up on our credit reports, period.
This is a card that you connect to your checking account and they report
Yeah.
on your checking account.
That might be something new because what I've seen in the past is you get these cards, like after you get a bankruptcy, there's about 3 companies out there that they'll give you a line of credit, and you send them the money for the line of credit. So if you happen to have $1,000, you send them, but these people report. So a lot of secured credit cards, or even the banks that are secured, they may not report, you know, to the bureaus, but these particular cards do report to all 3 bureaus, so you're getting credit for your timely payments. But if you went and gave them, say, $1,000 if you had it, and then you used that 100 to 200 window of usage and kept paying it off every month, that's going to build great credit, and it's being measured because they're reporting every month to the bureaus. The way they do it, though, is those cards are, the way they make their money is they charge you a fee to get the card typically. So the very first charge will be the cost, or they'll charge, so there'll be a fee plus whatever line. If you want a bigger line, then you just send them more money. And so essentially it's your money, but they're measuring, or they're servicing it out just like a credit card, but there's an annual fee or whatever. And you don't keep those cards typically for very long, because once you get normal credit, you want to get rid of the ones that are charging you $200 a year or $300 a year to have the card,
Another strategy I heard is if you have yourself, like if you have the bad credit, or in this case, your friend, have somebody add him as an authorized,
an authorized
somebody
user.
that has a good stat.
That used to be a trick in the biz, but lending got wise to that. So now when we run automated underwriting, it will actually tell us if there's an authorized user. It has a message in there about it being an authorized user. So for example, I used to have kids who didn't have any credit and they're trying to buy their first house, and their parents would add them to their credit cards, and then of course I have to deal with the fact that mom and dad use the credit card regularly, and it's $7,000 balance right now. Well, this kid can't pay that off. So we have to go and prove that they don't make the payment. It's kind of a pain there. But the point is, you can do that, and it does help the scores, but I would say you need to do that in addition to other stuff, because if all you have is authorized user accounts, you're going to get the flag when it gets run electronically for underwriting that it's got too many authorized user accounts. They actually look for that now. So I don't always recommend that, but it can work. I've also seen a lot of people self-reporting their utilities, which I don't know.
This extra card does that.
Yeah, so that might be something that would help scores. I don't have enough experience with seeing it from someone who wasn't doing it, and then all of a sudden they did it, and how did that impact their scores? But I have seen a lot of people doing it. Now, what's nice is if it's like a power bill or water or whatever, and it's self-reported a utility, I don't have to count that debt against them. So even though it shows up on their credit, it's not something we count against them for debt, when we're calculating their debt ratios. So if it does help them, maybe it's not a bad idea for someone to try that, because you're paying it anyway. Why not get it reported or self-report it? And then again, once you get your scores up where they need to be, you could probably stop self-reporting your utilities. So, but any other questions?
FICO, I looked it up. Fair Isaac Corporation.
It's Fair Isaac, but the C and the O, I'm not exactly. I got to go back and look to see. I mean, I'm sure if we Google it, we could.
Fair Isaac Corporation, that's what it says here.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, but yeah, it's a model that came out a long time ago, and it's still the model today that everybody uses. But all right, thanks guys. Appreciate you coming, even though the lights were out. That was awesome.